Hello, everybody, and welcome back to yet another episode of Grounding into Simplicity. My name is Tish, and I have my very good friend here today with me. His name is Edward. And Edward and I met just over a year ago at a beautiful farm that him and his family owns here in Costa Rica. And ever since the day we met, there was just this beautiful connection of like resonance. And it's such a joy and a pleasure to welcome you today, Edward. Maybe just introduce yourself a little and share with us where are you currently.
Thank you so much, Tish. Such a pleasure. I'm currently here in Costa Rica, just outside of the capital of San Jose, in a very nice city called Ciudad Colón, where the University of Peace is, and beautiful, beautiful natural background always of impact people and change makers in the organic market. So even when I'm in the city here, I'm so grateful to be connected to such beautiful minds. And let's see a little bit about me. I moved to Costa Rica about 12 years ago from New York City. I was a nightclub promoter and event producer, and had to change that whole way of life. It became unsustainable to my health and also to my purpose in the world. I still loved producing events and connecting people to those moments that bring them to life, but I started seeing things changing. I went to Burning Man. I went on retreats for my first time. Masterminds with entrepreneurs, and I was like, whatever this kind of event is, where we're growing, where we're building tribe, this is what I want to dedicate my life to. And also living a life that's not just in that experience, but having a life where the retreat, the wellness, all of that sustainability, organic food came to be. And I started looking with my family. My grandfather was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And when he passed away from that, my father and I and my mother, we sat together and we said, how could we do this differently? How could we prevent things like this? How could we live more holistically, detox? And that whole world of Whole Foods was just starting, the organic movement, everything. And I left my job in nightlife. My father also sold his company. And we looked at where specifically we could create an example of abundant and thriving living. Where we could create a longevity center, a community, a retreat center, all these things that were starting to boil up inside of me, and where we could create the purpose of connecting people to that great life, to their best potential. So that became essentially the reason why I went down to Costa Rica. We looked for land to build community and retreat center, and spent about 12 years that were both beautiful and difficult. I didn't know how stressful it could be to build a wellness center. I didn't know what was involved with all of it, the raising capital, the finding the land, all of it. But it all got me down here one way or another. And we ended up being able to build out the retreat center and parts of our vision that felt organic, felt needed. Other parts didn't work just yet, but I felt really good in an ecosystem where people like Stephen Brooks, who built Ecovia, and others who are doing these great sustainable communities and retreat centers and festivals. Wow, this is my home now, and I want to support others who are bridging people to better ways of life, but also see what specific purpose I had in that mix. So I ended up working for a major hotel brand, consulting a lot of developers, doing a lot of stuff during that time, all around this space of real estate, hospitality, events, but getting people from one way of life to another.
Beautiful. Wow. What a mouthful. What a beautiful story. How you got here to Costa Rica, and how grateful we are that you are here and the beautiful place that you've created and co-created with your family. The intention for this series, Grounding into Simplicity, is also to give tools, to people as they are moving through transitions and shifts, just as you were in that lifestyle of nightclubs and production and all these things, and you felt this shift, or may I say a bigger shift. And I feel what's happening for a lot of us right now that we have this time to pause, we can feel shifts within ourselves. And it might be a different way of thinking, a different way of showing up, questioning what is our values, questioning why are we waking up in the mornings and why do we do what we do. And, going through these shifts can be can be very ungrounding because it's very new, it's very uncertain, and it can be very lonely. So I'm curious to know,
Yeah.
as we are as a collective now moving through a shift, a major shift in consciousness, what are the tools that you are currently using to feel grounded and stable and to come back to the simple joys of life? If you want to share a little more.
Yeah, yeah, and I love I love that this shift is happening now where we all have this pause and this ability to reanalyze. About 2 or 3 times in my life, I've had major moments of change, and they're very destabilizing. One was a very difficult moment with my project financially some years back, divorce, everything that you could imagine that can happen to someone in one moment. And I got out of that partly with my own responsibility to my life and partly due to some tools. One thing I was very lucky for is always being surrounded by healers, teachers, practitioners of the best modalities: yoga, meditation, energy workers. But I did find one thing that was really interesting is that it's really easy to learn something, but not apply it. It's really easy to go through a healing process and a week later feel that you haven't gone anywhere. And so for me, the one tool that I've always used is my little journal, because it's kind of my accountability tool to make sure if I'm really responsible for creating my life and my growth, I want to check back in somewhere and say, okay, if I set an exercise goal, if I want to explore an emotion, where am I looking at that? If I'm trying to track certain lessons that I'm learning. And so I started using, I think I've been using my journal for about, so I was about 15 years old. I'm 30 now. So yeah, 35. So I've used my journal for about 20 years. And I looked at every journal methodology possible. I ended up making my own kind of amalgamation of it that I called the SAIL method, because I started tracking all my synchronicities. Like, when would the magic happen? All the accomplishments I was doing. So when I was down on myself that this retreat center isn't happening or something, I'm like, look at all these accomplishments. And I would just circle the letter A in my journal. And I was like, look at this. This is great. I've accomplished more than I thought. As an entrepreneur, like, it's so easy to look forward and not actually look at what you've done. So yeah, and then also tracking ideas and lessons and things. So when I learned a lesson like do nothing, it's like one of my healers told me, Ed, instead of meditating only, take some time to do nothing. And it's funny because right now I have a lot of time to do nothing with what's going on in the world. But it was one of the hardest practices any spiritual teacher has ever given me, because I ended up writing him back saying, hey man, what do you mean doing nothing? Like, should I meditate? He's like, nope, that's something. I was like, should I journal? Should I just, what happens if a thought flies in? And so this whole like really simple concept of doing nothing became kind of a whole exercise in my journal, where I was like, okay, I had a really tough time with this today. Thoughts kept flying in, or this or that. So I have these tools that I get in my tool belt. I'm sure as you have and other people have. So I put them all in my journal. Even sometimes, I feel like we do exercises too. Like, I've done kind of what's my mission, what's my vision for the world, things that sometimes we do for branding or other things. But when I look at it for personal growth, right now, I had to redo all those exercises because I had a big pause. And I'm like, okay, my mission might have been X, but how has that gotten refined, And so, yeah, basically journaling was probably the most important place where I could do metrics on my health and personal growth, and also track some of the magic that was happening in my life and the ideas that would pop in my head, and even manifestation. If I wanted to manifest something, um, I could actually see what I'm manifesting. And if I'm doing well, I'm going to manifest way better when I can see that it's a series of things that I've made happen. I built confidence that, wow, I can manifest, or I can have empathy. Whatever it is that I was working on, I had a way to map it and track it.
That's truly amazing. I love that. So share with me now, would you use these journals and kind of look back and reflect on them, or would you keep them, or would it just be like you go through tons of journals and you just kind of disperse them? Because what I found is that I go back on these journals, and then sometimes I'll only write into the journal halfway, and like now I have started a journal again that I ended up last year I finished it in June, and I kind of picked up again this year. And then I would just look at like the synchronicities. Share with me a little bit more about this format that you use, because I remember once you shared with me there's like these 4 letters or something that you use that's like the
Yeah,
synchronicity, and maybe just go over that again. So it's like sail, right, which is the synchronicity, and
yeah,
maybe give us like a quick little shortcut as
sure.
how we can remember this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I created this mostly for myself. I share it with friends in workshops, but now I have like little videos on it and things to help people on my Instagram. But really, it starts with the 4 letters, like you said, sail. So I want to track all my synchronicities. So when any kind of magic happens, like even when we re-met this year, we know each other, but we met at an event. So I would put Tish, synchronicity, and I would just circle an S next to your name in my journal. It might not mean anything. Maybe we're not going to do a project together or business together or something. It doesn't matter. It's just seeing, okay, Tish synchronicity. And I would see not only what synchronicities I had, but also what day, like what weeks there was like tons of S's in my book. And I'm like, wow, this week I had like so many S's. What was I doing differently? Holy shit, I'm meditating this week. I'm drinking enough water and eating for the first time clean food. Could this have something to do with my synchronicities? I don't know, but at least tracking them, I can see what in my life is creating these magic moments. Maybe I'm going to more events. Maybe I'm living differently. So S was the first one. I love to track synchronicities, especially when you get multiple breadcrumbs. So for example, me and you have another synchronicity today. We did this call and I start seeing you appear in my journal every week. I'm like, something's going on here. Either, somehow there's something being created between me and this person, or maybe it's a synchronicity that I keep seeing journals everywhere, and it means that I have to go full force into journaling. So whatever it is, I don't want to define a synchronicity as like, holy crap, I met that person, this is it. It's just little breadcrumbs, little signs that something is happening. So the synchronicities are awesome to track. And then I go into accomplishments, which is pretty self-explanatory. When I do something, worked out today, I'll put an A. Meditated for 10 minutes, did my website. I'll track every accomplishment I can. I is for ideas. I don't like to keep ideas here because it becomes a big mess and I have all these ideas. And when I go to speak to someone like you, I'm like, Tish, I got so much to tell you. I'm working on this and this and this and this. And you're like, Ed, what are you really working on? And I'm like, oh, let me refine that. So the ideas kind of also sometimes connect to the synchronicities, but it's a place for me to put ideas down, not worry about them. Maybe there's an idea that's for 10 years into the future, create a retreat center network, whatever it is, doesn't matter. Maybe it's not for me to do. Maybe it's something I support or one of my brothers or sisters who end up doing it. But I love to track my ideas. And finally, the most important one is lessons. I used to be a philosophy major. And so, I love wisdom. I love reading great books on wisdom, listening to podcasts, whatever I can to soak it in. And if I get a really good lesson that applies to me, whether it's posture, breathing, some kind of emotional balance technique, something that helps me, and it's a lesson for me that I'm like, wow, I need to do this. I'll put it there. And at the end of the day, at the end of the week, I will look at all of those things, because I found that going back to my journals was so hard. There's so much content. So I started doing it. And by the way, I've played with my journaling technique. So even though I have this structured method, there are days that I just free write because it's my journal. It's my life, right? One of my friends loves to do the artist's way, the Julia Cameron, I think is her name. It's this very creative journaling process because she's an artist and writer. So she'll do pages of just free flow emotional writing and things that come to mind. I'll do that for a paragraph every morning, sometimes for a week. So what I love is all of this is flexible. And when I looked back in my journals, once a week on Sunday, I would do a little tally of all the synchronicities, accomplishments, ideas, lessons. It took me 15, 20 minutes, and it was a beautiful review of the week. And at the end of the month, I would sometimes combine those. And end of the year, I do a yearly review. So at my yearly review, I can look at 12 pages in my journal, see all the lessons I learned this year. I usually do it right before New Year's. And it's kind of a really awesome self-reflection, self-analysis process where the goal for me was always to integrate what I'm learning. And I think just like any process, I found that I could read hundreds of books without applying any of the stuff I read. And so there I was like, okay, now I can see, am I really integrating this lesson? Am I really, if it's live simply or with less distractions, how did I do? And so that gave me a way to do some metrics. And also I bought a journal recently that had, I'm just going to show you, that had a metrics tracker at the back. And everything from health metrics to personal metrics, I would put in this little grid. And it kind of looks like this when it's filled out. Let me see if I could bring it closer. But yeah, there we go. It was kind of a grid with all of my stuff. And I put here, for example, pray and meditate, journal, stretching and exercise, morning, let's say organization of my day in the morning. So all the things I want to hit, I would put here. And I check them off as I go throughout the day. It's way more structured or rigid than I normally do these things. But for me, it was perfect, and I have a friend who uses it as part of her psychedelic integration process where she has people track all of the things that are happening to them. So yeah, having some form of metrics or habit tracker, I always found very useful to kind of keep up with it.
Amazing. Oh my goodness. I love that metrics tracker. It's for me, I could say my journaling has been shifting. Every year it changes, like once I was very into like the We Moon calendar, where it's like this calendar for women and we just dive deep into the exploration of storytelling. And then another year it's all about goals. But I feel like this method that you just shared is an all-rounder. Anybody can kind of implement this into their daily life and really utilize it as a grounding tool to really like anchor in like what is real in this moment, and then also use it as a tracker and then a reflection tool. So thank you so much for sharing that. I really enjoy that. So I'm curious to know, we're both in the retreat industry, and when we had our event together in March, we kind of got out of the prayer, 4 days of just being in a beautiful circle and celebrating and praying together, to a place where I found myself where all the retreats was canceled and all of the upcoming events was canceled. And so I'm curious to know, with this shift, how has business shifted for you, and what new creative projects is currently in your field that you find joy in doing and creating right now?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you. I mean, yeah, we literally ended a retreat together and stepped right into this new reality. And it was a great moment of pause, first of all, for me, because even living in Costa Rica, retreats, events, everything's just moving, moving, moving. Um, Obviously, the big shift happened when a lot of retreats and tourism just stopped, not just in Costa Rica, because I do retreats globally, as do you. So all of our retreats kind of went on hold. And I started to work with the teachers that I would plan retreats for to create their online courses. Some of them stepped into these free live events, and I think those are great. What they weren't providing, though, was an income stream for a lot of the teachers and healers that I really respect. And having them now, being able to guide them to the right resources so they could create online courses and do what they do still and connect with people on online retreats, which I still think, COVID or not, like it's something that's happening. So one of the things was seeing everything shift online. Also being able to not have to jump on that hype right away. Like my teachers were like, "Wow, how do we do the Zoom and the this and the that and the live?" And I was like, "Don't rush. The market's saturated with so much stuff now. You want to do some free tools for your community, do it, and do it whatever way you want. Jump on Instagram, jump on a Zoom, do an interview, do whatever. But really, the event industry for me, I think, is now focused on things for 2021. And most of our retreats are rebooking with cancellation policies and things like that. For me, it was a bigger pause because I had to think why I came to Costa Rica in the first place. And it was to bridge people to a better way of life. Even if it wasn't Costa Rica, it was to give them that example of living sustainably, eating organic food, meditating, whatever they had to do, even if it's 2 hours outside of New York City, Doesn't matter. You don't have to go all the way to Costa Rica to do these things and start these communities. Um, so yeah, a lot of my friends asked, you know, we have land, we have projects, how do we start living on them quicker? And I had designed a tiny home concept some years back. And so now we're doing essentially these tiny homes that people can move onto their properties very quickly, and have very affordable solutions to live in nature. So for me, it was, okay, how do I bridge people to this way of life so that my Instagram doesn't make people angry anymore when I show that I'm swimming in a waterfall while they're confined in an apartment? Oops, sorry about that. I think it paused for a second.
That's okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Oops, sorry, give me 1 second. There we go. Yeah, so basically looking at how to give people access to this way of life became the top priority, because I've not had a very hard confinement. Um, oh, so sorry. Did it keep stopping, by the way? Or does it keep going?
You could just go
Okay,
on.
cool. Yeah, no, just because when I get a phone call on the thing, it pauses the Zoom. But yeah, so I really started to look at, okay, what is a way to access this way of life? Because it's not money. Like, I spend way less on rent here than I do there. So yeah, definitely it wasn't money. Oh, yeah, there we go. Hold on, I'm gonna do not disturb so that I don't, we're getting there. um, yeah, so it was really looking at the reality of, like, I feel so blessed to be here during a time of quarantine. Even if I'm isolating, there's nature, there's birds, and I have friends now moving out of cities into nature all over the world. So to aid them in doing that, I said, wow, I've worked for hotel and land developers my entire life. And one of the solutions we use is small houses, hotel rooms, etc. So decided to really do that now and really go full force, not just in creating a tiny home project, but also a community, a place where people can have an alternate living possibility that's extremely, extremely affordable. They can literally lease these things for a quarter of the rent that they pay in their apartment. And the idea is also to allow people to taste this life. So if people want to move to Costa Rica, and you know better than me, man, I ended up going all over the country: Puerto Viejo, Tinamaste, Nosara, you know, same in Mexico. When I look at retreat centers, there's so many thriving places. If you said, Ed, you have a free house in Mexico, put it wherever you want, I wouldn't know where to start. I would have to start hopping around for a month and see how I feel in these communities. And that's the one troubling part or tough part about community living. Not everything is for everyone. So different areas, different tribes. So then we said, look, if we have these little homes in intentional communities, eco villages, towns that are essentially neighborhoods that are ecological, like Nosara, that has Waldorf schools and all this stuff, then someone can go stay in a house for a night, a week, a month, see if they feel good. And then if they really want to make the shift, we wanted it to be something that's below 20K. And I say that because it's practical numbers. I'm like, I pay rent in my apartment now, you know, for like $500-600 a month. I can be living in an incredibly sexy A-frame on the beach in Puerto Viejo and be your neighbor. Like, I want that. I want to leave the city right now and be in nature. So yeah, I guess it's been kind of a reactionary thing to the times that we're in. But people are asking me, how do we live this way? And until the experiences come back, this was kind of my vehicle to allow people to experience this life, you know?
Beautiful. I love that concept. And it's so true. You know, people come here all the time contacting me and saying, Tish, where's the communities at? And the truth be told, that yes, there is communities in Costa Rica, but they're all dispersed all around Costa Rica. And each community holds a different value system and a different way of living and breathing. So it would be great to have these little tiny homes. So can they actually drive these tiny homes around, or will it be stationed at these communities? How does that work?
Yeah, so it'll be stationed there. Basically, we wanted to deploy quickly. So we ended up, before we even built the website and things, we ended up having people make orders. And so we looked at a house that we could deploy in terms of, once it's designed, in a week. So the process will take 1 to 3 months in total, depending on how quickly someone moves. But at the end of the day, we take it to their property or to a property. We place it there and we build it within a week. It's all panelized and goes up in a semi prefab style. And then basically very quickly they can start to live on that land. If they wanted to move the house, it's really easy. We come and we pick it up. It's not the best process because ideally you keep a house where it is. But we have friends who are building, let's say, a real home, and they like a big home, and they want this tiny home as their beginning, and it will become a guest room or a rental unit. Because the other thing is, I don't know, at least from my friends, they're not some wealthy people who need third and fourth and fifth homes. They want a place where they can live and also have an income producing and rent it out. So if they're not there, they want to go for a month to, you know, a vacation or a travel. They know they have something they can rent out that's their own income producing thing. And depending on if they have land in an eco village or not, you know, most of these units will be placed in places where they can kind of just explore.
Amazing. I love that concept. I'm so, so happy that this is unfolding, and hopefully we can get some of those tiny homes here at this eco village that we're building here in Puerto Viejo. That would be so amazing.
Let's do
So,
it.
so do you have a website where people can find you and for these tiny homes, you know, and also if you wanted to speak about anything else that you feel could be of value for our listeners in terms of just a little bit of wisdom for this timeline or anything that comes through for you, just feel free to share.
Sure. Yeah, maybe I'll start with that. But for me, this has been a time of radical responsibility. I've seen people in living hell on earth and heaven on earth. In the same situation, in the same crisis, I see people who are thriving and people who are not thriving. And I have empathy, but I also have a sense of self-responsibility that if you take active control of your life and you make the decisions that you have to make, you're not a victim to any of this stuff. I literally have people who have had COVID that I know who are not victims. They're people who are thriving and coming out of this and changing their life. So I don't mean victim in the sense that you have something or you don't, but more of your attitude. So I've seen a huge shift in people now waking up as leaders, finally pursuing their dreams, finally hitting pause on 20 clients so that they could do the one thing that they're meant to do. So for me, it's a time of huge hope and transformation. I'm very sad that this is the way it had to happen. I'm very grateful to see all of the positive things that are emerging from this. My friends who have had that dream idea that's finally launching, you know, people who are now never thought about social impact or community or any of it, are doing projects of philanthropy and give back. So yeah, if there's any message, if there's anything, is it's not just the, you know, a luxury to heal and grow and ground yourself. It's a responsibility for you to be your best and for me to be my best right now. So I started meditating again in the mornings. I started doing my journaling. I started praying again in a very different way, not to like a single God or something, but in my own way. And really started not looking left and right, but looking this way and saying, okay, what have I held back? Where can I grow? And really calling myself out on the bullshit, you know, saying, hey, it's time to rein this in, because it's not about you anymore. You need to be your best self for others. And I'm so happy that it's not a lonely process. Even the people I'm in a house with right now, they're just in launch mode and they're happy, and we're confined and we're like doing that whole thing, but it's just such a beautiful process too, to be creating again, and to be inspired again to do that. So yeah, I guess that would be the message. Figure out the purpose and go do it in the world.
Yes, 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 yes. Thank you so much for that wise words that you just shared, and such a beautiful knowing that, you know, our time is now. And even if it feels like we're in the mud, we know that the essence of the lotus is coming through no matter what. And each of us are coming and rising from this mud into becoming the better versions of ourselves through this epidemic that's happening, you know, and we are finding the little gems inside of ourselves. So thank you so much for
Yeah,
your time today. I'm really, really honored and thrilled to have had you. I will be posting all your website and all your information and
thank
everything
you.
on this video link so people can find you. If people want to know more about your project that you have with the retreat center, they can also reach out to you. I'll put that link for the Vida. It's, what is it
Appreciate
called?
it. Yeah, so right now all the retreat stuff is on experiencevida.com, and the best place, also my Instagram. I also respond pretty quickly to people. So my Instagram is at Edward Zadelman, and I'll be putting up a lot of the stuff on the tiny homes and all the other things, and all the journaling videos live there. The journal is free, by the way. I don't sell it, so I'll give you the link to it. It's called salemethod.co, and we could paste it for people. And anyone who wants a free journal template, they can just download it. I just really want people to use it, not try to monetize that today, because it's been really helpful for me. One day I'm going to make a physical journal, so that'll be the fun part. And also, I think we'll have the website for the tiny homes up in about a week. But for now, social media and my website, they'll find everything.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again, Edward. If you like this video, please share it, please like it, please comment, and stay tuned for another episode of Grounding into Simplicity. So much love, family.
Thank you, Tish.
You're welcome, love.